How's it going, everybody? My name is Lucky Buns, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through the ultimate storage management guide in Pokemon GO. It's been a few years since I actually made one of these, and since then, I've put together a ton of new strategies to help stay organized and transfer unnecessary Pokemon even quicker. For those of you who don't know, I've actually been a free-to-play player for the past 8 years in Pokemon GO, which means I've never spent any money on Pokecoins. The only way that I've been able to earn Pokecoins in-game is through the gym system, so it's taken quite a long time to upgrade my Pokemon storage as well as my bag space. I'm currently sitting at 3,700 Pokemon storage right now and 3,400 bag space. The maximum Pokemon storage in Pokemon GO currently is 7,800 and the max bag space is 6,800. So you can tell that I'm nowhere close to this amount, but I've still been able to make it work somehow for the past 8 years. Now, many players manage their storage in different ways, and I personally like to take advantage of the tagging system. It seems like a very tedious process to tag all of your Pokemon, but you will see by the end of this video why this works so well. I'm going to be going through everything step by step, so make sure that you guys watch this video all the way through if you're having trouble managing your own Pokemon storage. Timestamps are going to be linked down below as always, so feel free to skip around as needed, but with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to be going over is going to be tagging fundamentals. So in order to actually tag a Pokemon, the easiest way is to actually just long press on it and then select a tag. Now from here, this is going to pull up a list of all of your created tags. If you don't have any tags set up, you can select add a new tag at the very bottom. Now from here, you can give it a name and a color, so I'm just going to call this one test, and then we'll give it a color as purple. Go to the left of the Pokemon storage and find your created tag. So if we scroll all the way down, we can see here that my test tag is at the very bottom. Now if I click on this tag and then I click on the bottom left Pikachu icon, I can add in as many Pokemon as I want in here. From this tag section, you can also click on the pencil icon in the top right. This will allow you to change the name and the color of your tag. I like to color code my tags based on certain groupings, but I'll talk about that more later on in this video. Now at this point, you guys know how to create tags, rename them, color code them, and then add Pokemon to them. The final thing that I want to go over is how to actually move your search tags and change their order. You ideally want to have your most used search tags at the very top, because when you go to tag a Pokemon, you can select them immediately without having to scroll down. Now in order to actually move these, just long press on the search tag and then drag it up or down. Now unfortunately there is no scroll bar, so it does take a bit of time. And I guess I forgot to mention this as well, but if you want to delete a tag, just go back to that pencil icon, click on it, and then at the very bottom it's going to have the option to delete a tag. So I'm just going to do that right now since we don't actually need that testing tag, and now we can move on. Now that we've covered the fundamentals for tags, we're now going to go over every tag that I have set up, and depending on your playstyle, you may not need all of these, but for the sake of this video, I encourage you to make all of them or a similar variation, and then delete the ones that you don't want later. I've been using my system for the past few years, and I found that you ideally want to have the least amount of tags with the most amount of functionality. So I have 2 power-up tags here at the very top. I have one for Pokemon that I'm actively working on and another for Pokemon that I might want to power up in the future. Whenever I get field research quests to power up Pokemon, I just come to this tag and I pick a Pokemon to power up. It's pretty easy. Now let's talk about my other power up tag. So I call this one Power Up Potential, or PUP for short. So I basically just dump any Pokemon that are potentially good for raids or PvP in here. Now for PvP, I use a search string on screen right now to pull up any Pokemon that are potentially good for Great League or the Ultra League that I caught within the past week. Now if I remove the age limit here, you can see that I have a lot more PvP Pokemon in total, including the ones that I've already built. Now if you guys want to actually save this search tag, back out of it after you've already typed it in, and then click on search again, and then you should have the option to see more or see less. Now long press on this, and it's going to save in your favorites below. Now if you long press on this again, you can actually go ahead and rename this. I call mine PvP search, but you can just call it whatever you want, so we can just call this PvP for right now. And then of course, if I want to just long press on it again, I can remove it as well. Typically whenever I'm out grinding, I'll just use this search string really quick. So I have 8 Pokemon that I caught recently, right? We'll check the IVs on these. So most of these aren't that good, but that Crawdont actually kind of stands out to me. 1 attack and then 14 defense and 12 HP. That's pretty good for PvP. But once again, I really have no idea how this actually ranks in terms of its IV, so I'm going to check this later, and I'll show you guys how to actually check these later as well. Now for raid battles, I sort by recent, and then I use the 3-star search to pull up anything that is between 82% to 98% IVs, and the 4-star search will specifically pull up hundos. Now if you've ever been curious about the IVs of a Pokemon and how to actually figure out what they are, there's going to be 45 IVs in total, right? So you have 15 attack stats, 15 defense stats, and then 15 stamina stats. So for example, if you have a 98% IV like I have on screen right now, we're going to use this Cyndaquil, which has 14 attack, 15 defense, and 15 HP. This would mean that it has 44 out of 45 IVs. Now if you actually divide 44 by 45, it's going to give you 97.7%, and if you round it up, that's going to be 98% IV. You can figure out the IVs for every single Pokemon using this math, but for the sake of good IVs, I'm going to leave this chart on screen right now with the calculations already done. These have already been rounded up or down, so for example, if you see someone with like a 95% Pokemon, that doesn't technically exist, they just rounded wrong because it should be 96%. the official calculation will be 95.55. I can honestly count this all in two hands, so basically 100% IV is 15, 15, 15 across the board, 45 IVs in total, 98% IV is 1 IV off, 96% IV is 2 IVs off, 93% IV is 3 IVs off, 91% is 4 IVs off, 89% is 5 IVs off, 87% is 6 IVs off, 84% is 7 IVs off, and 82% is 8 IVs off. Anything below that is not going to be a 3-star Pokemon. Now finally, for Shadow Pokemon that are going to be used in raid battles, I pretty much just dump anything in here that's potentially meta relevant, even if it doesn't have optimal IVs. For those of you who don't know, a 0% IV Shadow Pokemon is better than its 100% IV non-Shadow counterpart. Now if you're actually curious which are the best Shadow Pokemon to keep for raid battles, then check out this video right here. It's also going to be linked in the description down below. Now that pretty much covers my Power Up Potential tag. I am going to revisit this again later on in this video though. Next up, let's go over my Miscellaneous tag. So this is pretty much my catch-all tag for small collections and pretty much anything else that can't be grouped together in one of my main tags. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't want to have too many tags because you lose functionality. So for example, I have collections for Perfect 5, 10, and 12 IV Pokemon. Perfect 5 is going to be the lowest IV possible when trading with a best friend, Perfect 10 is going to be the lowest IV possible from research and raid encounters, and Perfect 12 is going to be the lowest IV possible from lucky trades. I also have my Nundos, which are going to be 0% IV Pokemon in here as well. Now these are arguably rarer than Hundos because there are going to be less conditions to actually get them, so I like to collect these two when I can. Next up, let's go over my trades tag. So one core aspect of this game is trading with other players, and so I use this tag to dump extra shiny Pokemon, legendary Pokemon, those with legacy movesets, regionals, unknown, and so many others. Next up, let's talk about my candy tag. So I keep two types of Pokemon in here. Those that I'm saving for a 2x transfer candy event, and those that I'm saving to trade for guaranteed extra large candy. One easy way for me to tell the difference is by sorting by Pokedex number and then transferring them away during the event. So if we use Carbink and Turtonator as an example, I'm keeping the Carbink for guaranteed extra large candy trades because that Pokemon is really useful in the Open Great League, but you need to have an extra large version built. Now for Turtonator, I don't really need the extra large candy, but I do want to get more candy on it because it's a pretty rare Pokemon. Now with that being said, those 5 tags are going to be the most important ones you have on here, which is why they're at the top of the list. Now from here, we're going to go through battle tags and collection tags. So first up, we're going to start off with my Mega Pokemon. This is pretty much where I keep all of my Mega Pokemon, including future potential Megas. This also makes it really easy to Mega Evolve whatever I'm working on getting to Mega Level 3. I usually do this about 1 to 2 times a week depending on cooldowns and how much extra Mega Energy I actually have on each Pokemon. Next up, let's go over my SP6 tag. So I get this question asked all the time in my videos. What does SP6 mean? So SP6 basically means Special Team of 6. This is what I use for my raid attackers based on typing. So you can only have 6 Pokemon per raid team, hence the name, and this is constantly updated based on new additions, and anything that basically gets replaced is moved to another tag lower on my list. I'm going to talk more about that one later. Next up, let's go over my Def tag, which essentially just stands for Gym Defenders. I keep this one shortened down because it makes dropping in gyms a lot quicker and easier. So I keep my top 20 Gym Defenders in here because the gym limit in Pokemon GO is 20. Now I'm sure some of you are wondering, why do I have really low CP Pokemon in here? Well, a mistake that many casual players make is dropping their highest CP Pokemon into gyms. The Shuckle and the Bronzor in here are actually 2 of my best Gym Defenders, based on how the decay system works, along with their defensive stats and typing. With that being said, let's get into the collection tags now. So I think it's really cool when you power up a Pokemon to level 40. This used to be the max level in game, so I have a tag for any Pokemon that is level 40 or higher, and some Pokemon that have powered up for PvP don't actually make it to level 50. So this actually allows me to showcase these Pokemon too. This is arguably one of my proudest collections in game, and it's always so enjoyable to look through. Now of course, I also have a tag for my level 50 Pokemon since this is the current max level in game right now. I only have 30 Pokemon maxed out, but this is easily over 10 million Stardust in just these Pokemon alone. Next up, let's go over my living Pokedexes. So first up, we have my Hundo Dex. This is basically a living Pokedex for my 100% IV Pokemon. In total, I have almost 300 unique Hundos in here. Next up, I have my Shiny Dex, so I have close to 600 unique Shiny Pokemon in here, which includes costume shinies along with shadow shinies. Next up, I have my costume Dex. So I wasn't actually a big fan of these in Pokemon GO at first, but they've kind of grown on me over the years. I have close to 200 unique costume Pokemon in here. Now finally, my last living Pokedex is going to be the Unknown Dex. In total, there are going to be 28 different Unknown forms in the game, along with their shiny variants for many of them. These are released mainly through special events like Go Fest, so I'm actually only missing Unknown V and Z currently. And I do have a lot of the shiny variants as well from playing the in-person events, which is honestly pretty cool to have. Next up, let's go over my Sentimental tag, which essentially are just Pokemon that hold special memories, and sometimes they don't really fit into any of the other tags. So many Pokemon, so many different memories, and honestly, like, they're all special memories to me. Like, this one right here means the world to me. Now, I also mentioned earlier that I have PvP tags as well, so I have Great League, Ultra League, and Master League. Now, if you're wondering why I have them titled this way, it's because some Pokemon actually have, like, GL in the first 2 letters of their name, like Glameow right there. And And then I also name a Pokemon in my power potential tag as like GL, rank, whatever it is. And so I don't really want to confuse any of that. Instead, if I just type in grade, it pulls up everything, and that's perfect. Now these last few tags at the bottom of the list here are the ones that I use the least, but they do have their purposes. So earlier when I talked about my SP6 tag, this is basically where all of the outdated Pokemon go. So in this Raids Miscellaneous tag, I trade these away sometimes, but for the most part, I kind of enjoy just keeping them as like a cool throwback to how the meta has changed over the years. I could totally get rid of all these Pokemon if I wanted to, but considering that I invested Stardust into many of them, like, it's just a little bit more difficult to do. But you can definitely see how things have changed here over the course of time. Like, for example, I had all these Roserade, which are like the best grass type attackers in the game. They are not in like the top 5 anymore, so that's kind of crazy. Torterra as well, I built those all during a calm day, so I didn't have to spend any Stardust on that. I have all these Gardevoir, but I just have so many better Gardevoir now. So many Tyranitar as well. We have these Mewtwo that aren't even as good compared to my other Shadow Mewtwo now. Now I also have one of these tags as well for PvP too. I made a few bad investments before I understood how PvP IVs worked in Pokemon Go, and I also powered up some Pokemon for the Little Cup, which I pretty much never run anymore, so I just leave those builds in here as well. But you can see here that some of these builds, I mean, like, they're not all terrible. Like this Beedrill, I don't know, like, it's not that terrible, but I just don't really like looking at it, so I just dump it in here. This Meganium, look at the IVs on this thing. Look at how terrible those IVs are, man. Like, that's just pathetic. So I don't even ever want to use this. Like, if I'm gonna use Meganium, I'm gonna do it the right way next time. And again, like, this was just really early on in PvP, so I put them in here for right now. I'll probably get rid of them eventually, but yeah, that's just kind of where they go. And then finally, I do have a work in progress tag, which is shortened down to WIP. This is pretty much my catch-all for any Pokemon that I plan on evolving in the future. Some Pokemon have very specific evolution requirements, like this Gothquill, or sorry, the Quillfish, the Sneasel right here as well. And then other Pokemon, I'm waiting to evolve it to get the Legacy moveset on it. So for example, this one right here, which evolves into Flygon to get Earth Power. Now at this point in the video, hopefully you have followed along so far. If you haven't already, take a moment to create all these tags in your own game and then organize them in the same order. I'm assuming that many of you already have raid attackers and PvP attackers built, so go ahead and tag those Pokemon first and place them in their respective categories. Put your top 6 raid attackers of each type in SP6, and you can throw anything left over in the Raids Miscellaneous tag. For PvP, simply put them in the Great League, Ultra League, or Master League tags. You can also make special cup tags as needed if you participate in those, but considering those are going to be limited meta cups and they're probably only going to last about a week or two, I think it's better to just kind of have them as temporary tags. I'm assuming that you've already organized your PvP attackers and your raid attackers at this point. If you haven't, feel free to pause the video right now and go through that. Now we're going to go through part 1 of the cleaning process, so basically just searching for anything that's going to be relevant and good. So first up, let's search for Hundos by typing in 4-star. If you have any of these, favorite them and add them to your Hundo Dex. If you don't want a Hundo Dex, you can just add them to your Miscellaneous tag. You can also add them to your Power Potential tag if they're going to be meta relevant. Now after that, we do also want to search for good IV raid attackers, so you can just type in 3-star. Now from here, just go through and add anything relevant to your Power Potential tag. You can decide what to power up later as needed for various raid bosses. So for example, I have this Togepi right here. Now if you're not really sure which Pokemon are going to be meta relevant, then I do encourage you guys to watch my top 60 best Pokemon to power up video from earlier this year, which covers all of the best Pokemon in the game. But essentially going through this, I can tell you right now, like the Squirtle evolving into Blastoise, that's not really good even with Hydro Cannon. Quaxly, Sprigatito, and Fuecoco don't really have that much meta relevance as raid attackers. Chespin's not really that good, Diglett's not good, Pikachu's not good, Melton's not good. Like, there's a bunch of Pokemon in here that aren't really that great. But I do know that Dino evolves into Hydreigon, so this Pokemon right here with 3-star IVs is probably something I want to save for the future. Now following that, the next thing that we're going to look for is going to be Shadow Pokemon, so just type in Shadow. Basically just add anything meta relevant to your Power Potential tag regardless of IVs. So in my case, I have a bunch of really good stuff here because I usually just transfer things as I go. So now just go ahead and add the search string on screen right now, which will pull up all of your really good IV PvP Pokemon for Great League and Ultra League. If you're going to be focused on the Master League, you ideally do want Hundos for that, so don't worry about this one. 4-star should have already pulled them up. Now pretty much just add anything in here that qualifies to your Power Potential tag. I'm going to show you how to figure out which ones are going to be good later, so just throw them all in there for right now. Now following that, we're going to be searching for 0% IV Pokemon. If you guys don't really care that much about these, then don't worry about this one, but I know that some people really do like having those Nundos, so just type in 0 attack and 0 defense and 0 HP. This will pull up all of your 0% IV Pokemon. I only have 5 of them right here, but this Shadow Dratini is definitely super cool. Now we're going to search for shiny Pokemon next. I would recommend keeping this in Pokedex order. Now if you want to have the shiny living dex like I do, go through and add one of each Pokemon to your shiny living dex, and then any extras, I would actually rename them as ? And then add them to your trades tag. Now after that, search for legendary Pokemon by typing in legendary, and pretty much from here just add anything that is untagged to your trades tag. Remember that we already added the good IV ones earlier when we typed in 3-star. The remaining ones will stand out because they're not going to have that tag icon next to them. So for example, these Yveltal, I'm going to add these to my trades tag, and now I'm good to go. The last search that I'm going to have you guys do is going to be for legacy move Pokemon. So the way that I have it set up is that you can type in special moves, but you also want to exclude frustration because that technically counts as a legacy move, so you don't really want those to be popping up. Considering that we've already tagged a bunch of Pokemon, I'm also going to add this as well. If we type in the and symbol, then exclamation point, the pound symbol, this is going to filter out all the Pokemon that are currently untagged. So I have this Typhlosion on screen right now, which has Blast Burn, and it also has, looks like good rankings for the Ultra League. So I'm going to put this one in my Power Potential tag. Now in terms of how I actually name my legacy move Pokemon, I put the yen symbol and then I put the pound currency right after. So basically yen stands for trades and then the pound currency stands for legacy moves because it kind of looks like an L. And then from here it just makes it really easy to pull up anything that I have these moves on. Now at this point type in the exclamation point plus the pound symbol. This is going to pull up all of your Pokemon that aren't currently tagged. Remember that we've already marked Hundos, Nundos, Shiny, Shadows, Legendaries, potential raid attackers and PvP attackers, and then actual raid attackers and PvP attackers. So whatever's left over here may have slipped through the cracks somehow, but basically just go through and sort by Pokedex number. Now from here I'm going to walk through this process with you guys and go through what I would personally keep and what I would transfer. So the Charmander right here I do want to actually keep for some extra candy, so we're going to put that in there. And as you can see here, like once we actually add those Pokemon to the candy tag, they are removed from here as well, which is going to be really useful later on. The Caterpie I don't really need. The Pidgey I do kind of want to get some candy on this, so I'm going to add these to my candy tag right now. I don't really need the Spearow or the Rattata. I don't need the Ekans. The Pikachu, I might want to actually keep these for some candy. Clefairy and Jigglypuff both have relevance as attackers in the PvP meta for the Great League, and then I think for the Ultra League as well, but I don't think I really need that many extra large candy on them, so I'm going to skip those for right now. I don't really need Zubat candy, I don't need Oddish candy, I don't need Venonat, don't need Diglett, Meowth. Now Mankey is a different story because Annihilape I think has some relevance in the Open Master League, so I do want to actually try and get some more extra large candy on that Pokemon. And then let's see what else we have here. Abra is going to be good for the Mega Alakazam, so let's keep some of those. Machop does have the Shadow variant, so I might want to get some extra candy on this Pokemon. Let's just kind of throw those in there for right now. It also has the trade evolution as well, which is pretty good for anybody who wants to just do like mirror trades on that. Geodude also does have that trade evolution going too, but I don't really need them, so I'm going to skip that for right now. Magnemite, I don't believe that I actually have a Magnezone at level 50, so I do still need extra large candy on that Pokemon. I don't really need Grimer for anything. Ghastly, that's a different story. That has the trade evolution, and then I also want to have extra large candy for the Mega Evolution, so let's keep that. Onix, same thing. We'll keep that. Voltorb I don't really need. Cubone can be skipped without. Lickitung is a really good one and a really rare Pokemon to keep for guaranteed extra large candy trades. We'll keep those. Chansey is a super good gym defender. We'll keep some of those. Now Eevee is going to be super good as well. More on a personal note though, because I do want to level 50 every single one of my evolutions. I do have every single Hundo. It only took me like 6 years to get. But I do have every single Hundo, so I definitely want to get more candy on that because it is quite a lot of extra large candy, guys. There's 296 per evolution, so definitely need more candy there. Shuckle, I have the Shadow Hundo, so I definitely need to get some more candy on that right there. Torchic has the Mega Evolution for Blaziken. Mudkip as well has the Mega Evolution for Swampert. Medicham right here is super good in the Open Great League, so definitely want to save these Pokemon for some guaranteed extra large candy right there. Everything else, not so much here. Nothing that's really standing out. Froakie and Fennekin, you know, Froakie, I would say yes, I do want to get some more candy on that. Rowlet and Litten already get Calm Days this year, so I don't really need more candy on those Pokemon. Popplio is probably going to get a Calm Day, so I don't need to keep those. Melton can definitely be transferred, so I'll just kind of leave those out. Sprigatito, I do actually want more candy on, so I'm going to keep these. Same with Fuecoco and also Quaxley, so in terms of these, I do want to keep these for some more candy if possible. Maybe just like a double transfer event would be nice. I don't think we're going to get their Calm Days for at least a few more years, so kind of getting more candy on them right now would not hurt. Now, pretty much anything else that's left over in here can be transferred. If you really want to go for it, just go ahead and select all right there, and you can transfer away everything. But if you still want to go through things one by one, double check to make sure that you didn't actually transfer away something really good, you can do that as well. In the case of me right now, if I actually click transfer, it's going to give me some warning messages, right? So I have 1 extra small Pokemon, 2 double XL Pokemon, 34 event Pokemon, and then 28 legendary or mythical or Ultra Beast Pokemon, which are going to be the Melton. So in terms of what I want to leave out, let's just click leave out right now and see what it leaves us with. So from here I have the Melton left over. Let's go through and transfer these ones individually so we don't get that warning message. Or I mean, like, we are going to get the message, but I can just ignore it this time. So yeah, let's go ahead and transfer away those. The Throw, that's a double XL, so I might keep this one for potential showcases. I honestly don't try to keep too many of these, but I think for some players that might actually be helpful. I'll put this in my Miscellaneous tag right here. Now the rest of these Pokemon are pretty much just costume Pokemon, so we can just go through and transfer them. Let's start with the Bulbasaur and the Squirtle. We have these Grimer, and then let's get rid of them right now. Alright guys, congratulations! You have now completed the first major milestone towards better storage management. You won't need to do all these steps again, so breathe easy, like this was the hardest part. From here on out, you can just use the search string on screen right now and just go through whatever isn't tagged. Now we're not done yet though. While all of our Pokemon are technically tagged, we still need to go through and start the downsizing process. Now this is going to be a very time-consuming process, but I guarantee by the time we're done with all of this, you're going to have a much cleaner Pokemon storage, and you're going to have a better way to actually manage your Pokemon in the future. So right now you have loads of potential attackers for raids, as well as PvP in your power potential tag. So we're going to start with that one first, going over the raid attackers. Remember, the end goal here is to build 6 Pokemon for each typing in game. So go ahead and type in 3-star, 4-star, and now go through each of your Pokemon and IV check them. Once you're done IV checking them, you can name them as well. There are going to be different naming conventions you guys can go with. The most basic one is just typing out the IVs you see in front of you. So let's check this Togepi, for example. This one is going to be a 13, 12, 13. This is going to be the most basic way to type out your IVs, and honestly I think this works for the majority of players out there, but the way that I like to do it is by typing the IV percentage, and if the Pokemon has 15 attack, I'm going to add it at the end too. So for example, we have this Dino that we caught earlier, right? This one is going to be a 91% IV with 15 attack. So I would go through and I would type it out like this, 91% IV, then 15 attack. Now I do power up Pokemon with 13 and 14 attack sometimes, but these are usually lucky Pokemon, so I'm saving like half the start as opposed to normal. The other exception is also going to be Shadow Pokemon, which are much harder to get good IVs on. For example, I have the Shadow Darmanitan. If we take a look at the IVs here, it has 13 attack, 10 defense, and 15 HP. In these types of scenarios where the Pokemon doesn't have 15 attack, I usually just leave the Pokemon name and add a ++ at the end for the optimal moveset. So in this case, Darmanitan does not have the optimal moveset, and it also has Frustration on it, so I'm not going to rename it with a ++ right now. But if we take a look, for example, at this Moltres right here, it has Fire Spin plus Overheat, which is the best fire type attacker moveset on it. Now if the Pokemon does have a legacy moveset, it might look something like this, where it has the L++ instead, and then if it has 15 attack, I'll add that at the end as well. For example, this Reshiram does not have 15 attack, but it does have the legacy moveset, which is why it has that right there. Now when it comes down to the Hundos, I don't put 15 attack, I just put it as 100% IV and then ++ or L++ if it has a legacy moveset. This is just how I do it though, so feel free to nickname your Pokemon however you like. I know a lot of people do their nickname strategies a little bit differently. Just do it in a way that makes sense for you. Next up, let's go over your PvP attackers. We're going to be going over 2 websites here to check which Pokemon are good and what IV rank they have. So Go Stadium is going to be for the IV rankings, and then PvPoke is going to be for the meta rankings. You guys can find this linked in the description down below, so it'll take you straight to the IV checker. And now from here, just type in a random Pokemon, doesn't really matter what it is. We're going to change the Pokemon later anyways, but for right now, I'll just use Jigglypuff, and go here to settings and then change. We want to set the settings to Wild Catch and then enabled for level 50 Pokemon. Then click close, and then you can click recalculate, and then that should be good to go. Now go back to Pokemon Go and go into your power potential tag and sort by Pokedex number. Now from here, we're going to go through and see if any of your Pokemon actually rank well within the Great League and the Ultra League formats. So type in the Pokemon name and then input the IV spread that it has. Let's say, for example, you caught a Jigglypuff, because I actually have a Jigglypuff right here. Let's go ahead and input that on Go Stadium right now, and it looks like we're good to go. Click recalculate and then scroll down. So even though I typed in Jigglypuff, it also shows me the rankings for Wigglytuff. Typically base stage forms aren't PvP relevant, so you will want to focus on the final stage form. Ideally, I try to aim for anything in the top 200 rankings in terms of IVs, but we aren't always that lucky, so I'll usually keep anything within the top 500 typically, and I'll just hope that I get a better IV spread later on. If you're limited on storage though, I would not keep these temporary placeholders. So now at this point, we know that we have a pretty good ranked Jigglypuff. We need to find out if it's actually going to be good in PvP though. So let's take a look at PvPoke. Let's go to the rankings right here. I'm going to type in plus Jigglypuff. Now from here, it's going to pull up everything in the Jigglypuff family. So in this case, we're looking for Wigglytuff mainly, right? So we're going to just click on Wigglytuff right here. It's actually ranked at number 59 in the Open Great League right now, which is pretty damn good. Now at this point, we've basically confirmed 2 things. We know that Wigglytuff is going to be meta relevant in PvP in the Open Great League, and we also confirmed that we have a good IV spread on our Jigglypuff. Now from here, just go ahead and repeat the process. You can also use the PvP search string I recommended earlier. This will actually filter out everything for PvP IVs, instead of actually having to go through your raid attackers at the same time. So, I mean, just go through that, rename them to whatever their rankings are. Like, clearly I have everything already marked in here, so they're all pretty much good to go. And then after that, you know, check PvPoke, see if they're actually ranked even well. If they're not within like the top 200, you could always just transfer it. You don't need to keep so many of these, just in the case that they might be good in the future. Like, that's honestly uncertain. I think if you have a lot of extra Pokemon storage, you can totally do that. But if you don't have that much extra Pokemon storage, then definitely make sure to transfer anything you don't plan on using in the near future, or just doesn't have good IVs. I always try to come through here and decide which Pokemon I want to actually keep. Like, for example, if I don't plan on using it in the future for any sort of reason, then I'll just go ahead and transfer it. Like, honestly, honestly. Do I really need to have an Ultra League Vaporeon right here? Probably not, but can I afford to keep it? Yeah, I can. But like stuff like this where you know that you're never gonna run it because it's not really that meta, it's a little bit outside of the meta, like you could probably just transfer it away. Next up, let's go over your trades tag. So you probably have a lot of Pokemon in here, and let's just start with the biggest group, which is most likely your extra shiny Pokemon. If you already marked your extra shiny Pokemon with the question mark from earlier, then you can skip this step, but if you haven't done that yet, I would highly recommend going through and renaming those extras with the question mark because it makes it so much easier to filter them out. I did recently put out a guide on how to actually send Pokemon from Go to Pokemon Home in order to get a Melton box, and once they're actually in Pokemon Home, you can then send them to main series games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet or Legends Arceus. I've been transferring over a lot of my extra shinies to Home, and then to Scarlet and Violet. I also send my Kanto shinies to Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. So as you can see on screen right now, I have this Lugia that I got from a trade. It's the shiny Lucky, but honestly the IVs are pretty bad, so I'm going to send that over to Pokemon Home. Same thing with this shiny Rayquaza and these two shiny Dialga right here. I also have a shiny Gible that I got from a trade. Like, I can't do anything with these Pokemon, right? So the best thing I can do is just send them to Pokemon Home and then use them in the main series games. Going back to the question mark shinies though, essentially all of your extra shiny Pokemon that you can trade away, I would go through and figure out how many of them do you actually need, right? So I have a lot in here. Like, I have a bunch of Bellsprout from the Calm Day. I probably don't need to have this many, so I'm definitely going to go through and transfer away some of them. The way that I look at this, right, is that you have two different types of shinies. Now for Calm Day shinies that are meta relevant or popular, I would recommend keeping anywhere from like 10 to 15. People always want this Pokemon. The same thing can be said for Beldum. I know I have a few Beldum in here as well, and I also have Charmander. Like, people always want shiny Charmander. I caught so many of these during the Community Day, which was the second Calm Day, by the way, and then we also had the Calm Day Classic, yet I only have 4 left, like, because people always ask me for them. Now on the flip side of that, for any non-meta relevant Calm Day shiny Pokemon, I would recommend keeping anywhere from like 1 to 5 extras. Like, I have all these Bellsprout, I can definitely transfer away some to Pokemon Let's Go. I'll probably keep about 6, maybe 5, but outside of that I have 9 extra shiny Bellsprout that are just taking up storage right now. Now I know some of you guys like to flex your shinies, but at some point you gotta ask yourself, how many shinies do I actually need? Like, how many shiny Chanseys do I actually need? But once again, with certain meta-relevant shiny Pokemon like Larvitar, Beldum, Gible, I keep as many of these as possible because people always ask for them. I have a ridiculous amount of shiny Gumi from the Calm Day recently, but I guarantee I don't need like 20 shiny Gumi, right? And most of you probably don't need 20 plus of the same shiny Pokemon. So downsize as needed and take advantage of Pokemon Home and Pokemon Let's Go. Now I told you guys earlier that the question mark would come in handy, right? Well, if you actually type in exclamation point and then question mark, this filters out all of your shiny Pokemon from your trading section, which makes it so much easier to go through and figure out what you actually have in here. Now let's talk about extra legendary Pokemon. So I try to keep as many meta-relevant options like Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, Reshiram, Mewtwo, Zekrom, etc. If the Pokemon doesn't have a legacy moveset and it's not shiny, I just leave them as a regular name, for example like these Regirock and Regice. There's really no reason to rename them. Kyogre, the same thing as well. There's no legacy moveset that's not a shiny. So I don't really need to rename it, but if it does have the legacy moveset, I talked about this earlier, like I'll just type in this symbol right here, and that way it indicates to me that this Pokemon is for trades, and this Pokemon also has the legacy moveset. In the case if it's actually a shiny Pokemon, I just do the same thing, question mark plus the pound currency for the legacy symbol, and this Pokemon has Psystrike, this one has Psystrike, so these are like really valuable, right? So in general, I try to keep as many of these as possible if they are meta-relevant or they have the adventure effect. So for example, my Origin Palkia and my Dialga, I have a bunch of them from the Sinnoh Tour earlier this year. I went to the in-person one because it was local, and then for the global one, it was actually really difficult to get the moveset on these Pokemon, so having all of these are incredibly valuable, not to mention it's the only way to actually get the adventure effects in-game. Now I try to keep as many legendary Pokemon in here as possible, but obviously like it doesn't make sense to keep a whole bunch of them, right? So if they don't have the legacy moveset, if they're not a shiny Pokemon, and people don't really want them that much, I'll usually keep about maybe like 2 to 3 at most extras, and then I'll transfer the rest of them away during a 2x transfer event. Now for example, these Yveltal, right? I have one that has Oblivion Wing on it, and then these other 3 that I just got, they don't have the signature moveset, so is there really a reason to actually keep them? Probably not, but I might keep like one of them and then just kind of put the other 2 in my candy tab. Now you also need to be real with yourself here. Like if you really aren't the type of player to actually go out and do trades on a regular basis, you can just transfer away your extras. Like you don't need to keep them. Maybe keep the ones with like signature movesets on it because those are pretty rare, but everything else, like for example these 2 Latios right here, I already have a shiny and I already have a 98, so do I really need to have more of these? Probably not. I'm not trying to trade for it anymore, so I could honestly just transfer these away right now, but I'm going to save them for a 2x transfer candy event, so I'm going to put those in that tag right now. Now I used to keep a lot of regional Pokemon available for anybody who would want them in trades, and you know, there used to be more of a demand for it. Ever since Pokemon GO Tour and Pokemon GO Fest started happening, we've started to get regionals like occasionally throughout these events, so people rarely need the extras anymore, so I don't really keep that many of them. Like I keep a few just in case, because like Torkoal's a regional, Tropius is a regional, Relicanth is like a really rare regional, at least it was before. Literally in the past like 2 to 3 years, not a single person has asked me for one of these regional Pokemon. So at the end of the day, like I don't even know why I'm keeping them, just maybe in case somebody wants them, but at the same time, like you really don't need to hold on to that many of these. The last thing that I want to go over in the trade section is going to be your legacy move Pokemon. So I have the search string already posted up on screen right now. And this pulls up pretty much everything that I have legacy moves on, including the shiny Pokemon, which makes it really easy to go through and see what I'm working with. Now earlier I went through which Pokemon I wanted candy on, right? And I put them in my candy tag. Now let's actually go through that and transfer away all the Pokemon that I honestly don't need candy on that bad. And the reason for this is because Pokemon Go Fest is upcoming, so there's really no reason for me to actually have all these Pokemon just sitting in here. So let's go through this right now. Honestly, I don't need the Charmander, that's fine. The Pidgey I can live without, I have enough candy on it. The Pikachu, to be honest, like I already got the shiny, and I think I had the Hundo from like a few years ago, so I don't need any of these. There's really no reason for me to get extra candy on that. The main key, yeah, like the extra large candy would be nice on Annihilate, but honestly, it's not like a high priority right now. Same thing with Abra, same thing with Machop, like none of these are high priority, I can catch them again. Ghastly, same thing. Onyx is kind of rare, but I'm gonna get rid of it. Lickitung, I almost have enough extra large candy on that Pokemon already, so I'm not really worried about catching like a few extras to get to 296. Chansey I have enough, Ditto I have enough. Eevee's a pretty common Pokemon, even though I do need a ton of extra large candy. I think my storage space is more valuable going into the Go Fest event, so I'm gonna get rid of these right now too. Now in terms of Tyranitar, I already have a bunch of Larvitar extra large candy, so I don't need to really worry about these. Like yeah, I could save these for somebody else in trades, but I'd rather actually take the 2 storage space. For Torchic, I can kind of wait on that. There's gonna be another event for them for sure, maybe even like a Calm Day Classic. Now for Ralts, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer these as well because I already have the level 50 Gardevoir built. For Medicham, I already have level 50 built for Great League. Metagross, I might want to keep that one just because Beldum is such a rare Pokemon to get, so I'm going to hold on to that one. Froakie don't really need, Flabebe I can live without. Carbink is pretty rare, but I'm not going to lie, like I would rather have the space for Go Fest, so I'm going to delete like maybe 4 of those right there. Yveltal, I can wait on that one because it is a legendary Pokemon. Sprigatito, Fuecoco, and Quaxley, honestly guys, like I can wait. There's going to be more events that actually have them. Otherwise, I would keep these for more candy. Same thing with Smoliv, I don't really need it, so boom, 160 Pokemon right there. And yeah, like could I definitely have kept some of these for trades in the future? 100%. But with Pokemon Go Fest upcoming, I would rather transfer away these Pokemon and just kind of collect them later because I'm going to get so many rare Pokemon during that event that I'm going to then want candy for, and I think those are a little bit more important. We've gone through Power Up Potential, we've gone through trades, and we've gone through candy. The last one that we're going to go through is going to be Miscellaneous. This is going to be your catch-all tag for anything random you ever wanted to keep. The best way that I found to go through this is to sort by Pokedex number and then go through your Pokemon one by one. You pretty much have to go through this stuff one by one, ask yourself why you're keeping it. If it's for sentimental reasons, move it to that tag. If it's for like a mini collection, just keep it in here. If it's for another reason that you feel is worth it, then keep it for right now. But if you're actually struggling to find a reason why you're keeping this Pokemon, then it likely means you should probably transfer it. For example, like I can justify every single Pokemon in here why I'm keeping it, but there's also a few Pokemon in here that I could easily transfer if I needed more space. For example, what do I need a 93% IV Shadow Weedle for? Like literally nothing. Like Beedrill's not going to be that good in terms of the Shadow form because you can't actually Mega Evolve it, so I could totally transfer this away right now, except for the fact that I like keeping Shadow Pokemon that are 3-star IVs. That is the only reason that I'm actually keeping this right now. The same thing for this Pidgey. There's literally no reason though that I should actually be keeping either of these. I could transfer them right now if I wanted more storage space. Now I do have some Pokemon that I can transfer away though in terms of why I would ever actually need them, I don't know. So we have this Boltoy, we have this Anorith, and then we have the evolution form right here, which I kind of forgot the name of it. But basically I have them all at 98% IV with 14 attack. Do I really need them? Like, am I gonna get the Hundo in the future? I honestly have no idea. This could just be the highest IV that I have forever, but as of right now, like, do I really need this Pokemon? To be honest, I don't, so I'm gonna transfer it. There's no reason that I need 98% IV. Like, it's not good for raids, it's not good for PvP, and even if it was good for PvP, those were not the right IVs anyways. So I don't need that Pokemon, I don't really need this Boltoy. Like again, like I don't know what I would actually use it for. So like, you have to go through this stuff one by one, identify which Pokemon are like this, and then get rid of them. I'm gonna transfer it right now, boom, it's gone. Get out of here, I don't actually need you. I'm gonna take the storage space, thank you very much. The reason why I like this Miscellaneous tag though is because it allows you to go through and transfer things on your own timeline. Like, you don't have to make make any of these decisions right away. You can sit on it, think about it for a little while, and then decide later if you actually want to transfer it or not. And when you eventually go through and you realize that you actually need more Pokemon storage, like the Miscellaneous tag is a great place to go because you might have a lot of random Pokemon in here that you probably don't need, and if you're hurting on space, it's going to be the first thing that I would go and check out. I guarantee you probably have a lot of extra shiny Pokemon, you might have a lot of extra random Pokemon that you're just keeping for whatever reason. Those are all going to be in Miscellaneous or your trade section. Like legit right now, guys, if I went through and I was like, I don't want to have any extra shiny Pokemon, I could transfer away 659 Pokemon. Now, would that be a great idea? Probably not, because some of these are really, really rare, but at the same time, like, if I wanted to get rid of all the extra Calm Day shiny Pokemon, like I already have my shiny living Dex, I have them in Pokemon Home, I don't need any more extras. I could get rid of even more Pokemon, but I can keep them because I have the open space. Same thing with my Miscellaneous tag. Like, you know how many Pokemon in here I don't really need? Like, I can get rid of the Weedle right there, I can get rid of that Blastoise, I'm never gonna use it. The Ekans, these extra Hundos I have, like I could get rid of all these Pokemon if I really wanted to. So that's like what? Over 400 Pokemon right there that could easily be transferred. Same thing with power-up potential. Like, do I really want to keep all these Pokemon potentially for the future? Maybe some of them, but I could definitely get rid of a lot of the PvP ones. Like, I guarantee it. Like this Nidorino right here, what do I need this for? Truly, what do I need this for? Maybe Nidoking gets buffed in the future and I'll actually use it, but if it doesn't, I'm just kind of keeping this here for no reason. Basically, by the end of this, you want to be as organized as possible, which hopefully this video has accomplished for you. You know, when I look at Pokemon that I don't actually need, it's really difficult to pinpoint which ones are actually good and which ones aren't good if I have to go through the whole Pokemon storage every single time. Because of these search tags and the categories that I've created, it's much easier to go through and figure out what I actually need and what I don't need. Now from here on out, all you have to do is just use basic search filters to find all the good Pokemon that you have and then add them to your power potential tag. So search for PvP IVs, search for Hundos, and then search for raid IVs. And then for the remainder of the Pokemon, you can use the anti-tag search and then tag them under Candy, Trades, Miscellaneous, or just transfer them. Now I totally understand that a lot of you watching this video may not have that much Pokemon storage, so honestly, coming from my point of view, this may seem kind of crazy. So basically, to end off this video, I'm going to go through my best beginner tips to actually help you guys out with this. If you decide to be a free-to-play player, you're going to have to be pretty harsh on yourself, like, because you're not going to be able to keep that many things. Not to mention, if you end up spending your extra Pokecoins on like raid passes or cosmetics and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to do that well over time, because again, like, you do need to actively be upgrading your Pokemon storage as you continue to progress through the game. Let's run through these tips right now though. So the first tip that I have for you guys is that the only Sentimental Pokemon you should be keeping in the beginning of your game is going to be your starter Pokemon. The next tip is going to be to not power up anything, just evolve your high level Pokemon. Literally do not worry about powering up any Pokemon until you actually get past level 30. We have so many events in game that allow you to catch high level Pokemon and then just evolve them straight into their attacker form, and then from here all you have to do is just get the right moveset on them, and then you can just use those as temporary attackers. The reason why this is so important is because when you eventually get those legendary attackers later on, you're actually going to have the Stardust available to actually spend on them to power them up. But if you spend your Stardust on random Pokemon along the way, I mean, you're not going to have anything when you actually need it. The next tip is going to be to transfer away anything that isn't meta relevant or has good IVs. Like, if you don't plan on powering it up, you don't need to let it sit in your storage. The exclusion here is shiny Pokemon and 100% IV Pokemon, since these are actually quite rare. Although, if you end up getting like 20 of the same Calm Day shiny, you don't need all of them. Send some to Pokemon Home, keep enough for your shiny family, and transfer the rest. Like, literally, there's no reason to be holding on to a bunch of Pokemon if you only have 350 storage. Tip number 4 is going to be to transfer away any extra legendary Pokemon during 2x transfer candy events. It's better to get candy to power up your best one with good IVs than to keep the extras for trades usually. The only exclusion here is if they have their signature movesets and they're meta relevant. For example, Reshiram with Fusion Flare or Mewtwo with Psy Strike. Now in the beginning, the only collection that I recommend starting is going to be your shiny living Dex. Everything else, don't worry about it. Like, I'm sure most of you guys probably don't have that many Hundos to begin with, and you can kind of work on that as you get them. But for example, having like a costume Dex, you really don't need that. I only have this because I have the space for it. In my opinion, this is a good collection tag to have because it's a goal that's going to continue to grow with your Pokemon storage and kind of at the same pace. Now I get this question asked a lot in terms of how to actually build PvP Pokemon without actually having anything good. So my tip for this, or at least my recommendation for this, is going to be to evolve PvP Pokemon during Calm Days. Don't worry about any of the other meta-relevant Pokemon, just play through Calm Day, get the Legacy move with good PvP IVs by using the search string that I mentioned, and then focus on playing Great League to just farm Stardust. That's it. Build Ultra League teams when you get the resources. It's going to take a lot more time to get your Master League team, so don't worry about either of those two leagues until you actually get Pokemon that are applicable for them. The only thing that I want you guys to focus on is getting to rank 20 as soon as possible. Once you do that, just farm Stardust for the remainder of the season. Do that as many times as you can, get the free Elite TMs, get a bunch of Stardust, and now you're going to have Pokemon to power up for the Raid/Gym meta as well as for PvP in the future if you end up getting a good IV spread on something really, really good. The next tip is going to be to find a trade partner if possible. simple. The best Pokemon that you can get your hands on in this game are going to be lucky Pokemon that are also going to be meta relevant. You're probably not going to get lucky friends with anyone for a while if you just started out, but you can randomly get lucky Pokemon from regular trades. These will be cheap investments, and the IV floor is going to be 12, 12, 12, which means that you're guaranteed to get good IVs on all of your Pokemon. Your chance of getting a hundo is also 1 out of 64, which is pretty damn good. Now if you do manage to get a Shadow Pokemon with good IVs, don't power it up yet, hold onto it in your power potential tag, and then transfer anything else that's not as good. You still have a long journey ahead of you, and you might end up getting a better IV spread later down the line as you're continuing to hunt. So if that's the case, you're definitely going to be glad that you did not spend the Stardust. In the beginning of the game, Stardust is a huge commodity, especially as a free-to-play player. So again, focus all your Pokecoins on bag upgrades and Pokemon storage. That is my top recommendation. But yeah, with that being said, that pretty much covers everything. Like legit, I think I covered everything in this video. If you guys still have any additional questions, let me know in the comment section down below. And if you still want to check out some more content, then watch these 2 videos right here. But before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you all real soon in the next one.